Welcome. This is the third instalment of our Technology Role Model series, which is in partnership with the Women in Technology Mentoring Programme. We are a 900-person community of individuals who are either looking to develop their own tech careers or help others to develop their tech careers. And that 900-member community, it consists of people right from undergraduate level through to CIO. So today we're going to explore your story, Mary, from quite a few different angles, because our members have got a few areas of interest. So some of them want to understand, how to climb to those senior levels. Some of them want to understand what kind of skills they need to get there. So these are all things that we'll discuss. So thank you for joining me. Mary Hopkins is Head of Business Systems and Informatics for NHS Wales Shared Services. I think it'd be useful, first of all, Mary, if you could just let people know what exactly that means and what you do on a day-to-day basis in that role.
Thank you, Kevin. And thanks to the Women in Technology Mentoring Program for providing platforms such as this to share learning. I'm really pleased to see the growing community. The last time we spoke, it was a 400 member, so it's gone to 100. So that's more than double. So fantastic effort there. And to see a growing community of women empowering each other in a technological space. And I think that before we delve into the meat of the conversation, it was sort of reflecting on events of the last year, plus even mainly how the pandemic has shown our resilience in being able to pull through things. We're not quite there yet, but not just our frailty, because there's been a lot of conversation about our frailty, but it's also about the resilience, about how we've all sort of pulled together in the face of a crisis to find a way forward, really. So from frontline healthcare staff to those who are working in, they've worked tirelessly and selflessly, to care for others. And also those who work in industry, academia, research, pharmaceutical industry, and of course, technology industry, sort of making sure that we all staying connected despite everything that's going on. So, and to remember those who've lost loved ones. So it has been one of those years to reflect, and it's just to reach out to everyone and say, we can do a lot, we can achieve when we come together and we work together, and not forgetting those in government who have to make those challenging decisions that impact so many lives. That can't be easy. And it's been supportive of all the efforts, really, and doing our part, whatever that little part is, it's been able to play our part in all that recovery effort. So I just wanted to mention that before we go into the meat of the conversation.
Yeah, no, it's a great message to share, and I think it's something that the members of the programme would absolutely be able to relate to. I think everyone within this community, it's not just about helping themselves, it's about helping each other. Which is a really great thing about the program we've got here. So no, good. So yeah, let's get into the meat of the conversation, as you say. So like I said, not everybody will know what a head of business systems and informatics does in a business that supports the NHS, like yourselves. So yeah, if you could just tell us, a little bit about that role, where it sits in the business, what the day-to-day looks like, that'd be fantastic.
So I work within NHS Wales Shared Services Partnership as head of business systems, informatics, and ICT. So shared services provide a number of professional services, technical as well as administrative services to health boards and trusts. And the resultant efficiencies of those services, as well as the economies of scale and the value add, enables other NHS Wales organizations then to focus on effective delivery of frontline services. So some of the services we provide include digital workforce solutions, employment, legal services, primary care, health career service, and procurement, to mention a few. I've worked within the health service for over 15 years now, and latterly in my current role, which entails both operational and strategic context in terms of responsibility for the professional leadership of that function, and more importantly, the delivery of resilient and user-centric services and systems. So whether you're looking at the the core infrastructure services or telephony services and the systems that we use to deliver services to our customers in the main. So the day-to-day, while we have a team of technical staff who function in their areas of expertise, my role, given the operational strategic context of it, is about operational work, but as well as relationship management. So it's ensuring that we're having the right conversations and engagement, not just at an operational level, but at a strategic level, as well as a national level. So whatever that entails. So you can imagine meetings and taking that away, a number of meetings, and being able to take those meetings away and insights from those to actually deliver services on the ground. So the last year more so has been one of those where, it's been a roller coaster of a year, and we've had to accelerate how we deliver services, look at new ways of working even, and new ways of delivering services. So in a nutshell.
Yeah. How technical is that role then? So you say you're working with technical teams, but a lot of the role is relationship management. Is that 50-50 or more weighted one towards the other?
I would say we have staff who actually do the technical piece. So my piece is understanding the strategic context, is understanding what the customers need, is delivering that. So it's bringing the strategic context to the table, is making sure that my staff understand, my team understand what it is we're trying to deliver, why we're trying to deliver it, and making sure that we actually deliver it. So it's finding the solutions to challenges, if you must put it that way. So in terms of rolling up your sleeves and getting under the bonnet, so that would be those experts in the technical field doing that.
Yeah. Okay. And one of the questions that's common that has been asked by our audience in advance of the meeting is, what are the parts of that job that get you out of bed in the morning, and what do you really enjoy about that role?
Or definitely being able to put the customer at the center of our services. When you know you've delivered a service in partnership with stakeholders, when you know you've delivered a service that does the job, so it's getting the jobs done from the customer's perspective. So it's making sure you don't deviate. It's not deviating from the user-centeredness and the customer-centeredness of our work. So knowing that you've delivered that and it's doing the job it's meant to do and the customers are satisfied, that's going to be a tick in the box. So yes.
Great. I think that says a lot about your personality, Mary, and the kind of person you are, that it's all about the helping people achieve that end goal is what drives you. So how did this all come about? Because I know personally that your educational background wasn't one in technology. So do you want to just talk our listeners through some of that story from where you came from to how you got to where you are now?
Thank you. It's interesting. I got into tech out of curiosity, really. So it was a curiosity that morphed into an interest. And once I found that alignment with my passion for finding solutions to problems, and there was no turning back. So my first degree was in biochemistry. So the intention at that point was to finish that first degree and go into forensics, do something, and do something around forensics in general. But I also knew from the outset that I was looking to do something around business management, so some leadership training. So wherever the conversation or the journey took me, the intention from the outset, even though I didn't know how things were going to work out, the intention from the outset was to, at some point, go into management and then leadership. But it didn't quite turn out that way because I didn't do forensics at all. I sort of deviated. So I took on a role in data processing. And not long after, I enjoyed it because it was something that was, up my street in that sense. I enjoyed it, but an opportunity opened then for still within data processing, a higher position which was more around quality assurance. And then subsequently, I had an opportunity to work within a multidisciplinary team. So this was my first taste of technology in that sense, in terms of having technical teams around me. So it was a multidisciplinary team comprised of software developers, graphic designers, analysts, So these were very technical people. So the role I was recruited into, you could call it the interface between the technological folks, so the tech folks, and the customers. So I enjoy that very much because the team was developing systems and applications, national systems and applications. They were developing websites. So really they needed that person that sort of looked after the knowledge base, as well as having the relevant conversations and engagement with customers. So I fitted into that and I absolutely enjoyed it. In the end, I took on the responsibility for the usability side of things. So when we're developing websites or applications, it's looking at how accessible those were, how compliant were those with accessibility, best practice and usability. So I got to engage a lot and do a lot of awareness sessions with the customers. And I could say the rest is history after that. It was one multidisciplinary team after another. So I was always that interface, that person that did the conversation and the engagement with the end user, which I love and I still love, because the way IT has evolved, you really need to understand from the user's perspective what it is you're trying to deliver and then deliver it.
Yeah. So a lot of our members, I guess, are some of them at the early start of their part of their career, and they're wanting to get into technology rather than already being in technology, or wanting to find that ideal tech role for them, having already had some kind of tech role. I think a lot of the reason they're part of this program is to develop skills and develop important skills to help them on that journey. So what would you say, to somebody at the start of their career, are the kind of areas of self-development and skills that they should focus on to unlock the kind of opportunity that you got to get into tech?
Okay, so there's so many ways to answer that question, but I think the first thing is being comfortable not to have all the answers figured out from the outset. So being comfortable, you may do if you have, so because there are some people, they're quite clear, right? I'm going to go, into university and I will study software development, computer science and programming, and they have quite clear that direction of travel. But if you are in a situation where you're not quite clear you want to go into tech and you're not quite clear what niche you want to create for yourself or what area you want to go into, I think be open-minded about change, being able to pivot along the way. It's okay not to get it all figured out, but it's just, in simple terms, being open to change in such a way that you go in a direction that serves your personal development, you're open to interest, because things will come up along the way that you probably haven't given a thought to. You may well start out as thinking, I want to go into programming, and along the way, you may sort of encounter people who are working in data science, and you think, actually, that I prefer that. And it's just knowing that it's owning sort of owning your professional journey, and being able to pivot as necessary, as more information come to light. Before we go further into that, I think regardless of the role, it is so important that whatever you do, that you are clear about how your role fits into the wider strategic context. So, because I think sometimes people lose focus with that, because you need to know how you fit into the wider picture in terms of what it is what we're trying to do here as an organization. What is the end goal? And how is my role, how is my job helping to get to that end goal? I think that's so important. Oftentimes it's about delivering that customer-centric services, and it's a customer-first mindset. So if you get that from the outset, regardless of where you then move or how your career progresses, you don't look focused then, because you know how you fit into the wider jigsaw puzzle. So be prepared to update your career plan as you go along. So that not only serves you personally in your development, but what you find is that within the technological space, we embrace change. To move forward, you've got to embrace change. It would help you as well in your career, in your professional growth, being able to pivot when necessary, being able to deal with the unexpected. I think, in the technological landscape, we know that that's something we've got to pivot, we've got to adapt as necessary to enable transformation. You also want to look out for opportunities to network. So, and it's the relevant networks as well. So there are networks out there A good example, I've got to give credit to the Women in Technology mentoring program. That's why we're here today. There are so many platforms now where those who have been on that journey, those who are where you're looking to go, they've learned a number of lessons. Why not tap into that and speak to them? There are people who are willing to share their experience and to spend some time for foreshadowing opportunities, for instance. So there are a number of digital networks out there. Shuri Network is one of them, providing shadowing opportunities for Black and ethnic minorities in digital health. There's the wider leadership groups, but it's just being selective, knowing where you're looking to go, whilst that is still forming and numbing. But I think it's about embracing opportunities to learn from what others have done, and it's embracing that for growth and learning. So owning, again, I've got to say, you've got to own your journey. You've got to own your development. So it's about being able to face challenges, because you find out that when you have challenges, and there will invariably be those times, those are opportunities for growth as well. I mean, I found in my journey that when there have been challenges, they tend to take me out of my comfort zone now and again. But coming out on the other side of that, the learning, I wouldn't change that for anything. It may have taken me longer. If I hadn't had those challenges, it may have taken me longer to get to where I am now. So be true to yourself, be your authentic self, regardless of the role. Be deliberate about your development. You plan that out. And just regardless of those challenges, you have a choice to tell your story. You have a choice to change the narrative to work for you in the direction you're trying to go. So enjoy your past success. When you encounter success, celebrate that success, celebrate the win, but don't dwell on it. So you can move on. So you've got to maintain a cycle of listening, learning from others, and then improving yourself. And it's a repeat, it's a cycle. It's got to be a cycle.
So it's an interesting thing you mentioned there. So I was having a conversation with another CIO earlier in the week, and he was talking about some advice he'd given one of his mentees, who had the option of doing something very, very different or staying where they were and doing the same thing. And he'd written this list of pros and cons to both. And the CIO's advice was, think about the person that you'll be at the end of both of those scenarios. So even if staying where you are goes fantastically well and doing the new thing goes horribly wrong, what will the impact to you as a person be? How much will each of those people have grown? And instantly the person realized that taking the risk, even if it goes terribly wrong, would transform them much more than playing it safe and not trying to develop. So yeah, I think it's an interesting way to think of it like that, rather than thinking about the two outcomes. Actually think about the journey and what you'll learn from that journey. So you mentioned pivoting. Obviously, that's something that you've evidenced that you've done, because you started off on this journey thinking you were going to do forensics and business management in forensics. When you pivoted into tech, did you still have that drive to know that you wanted to get into a management position, or once you got into tech, was it then a whole new world? You didn't know where you were going to go?
No, interesting question, Kevin. I think once I started off on that journey, I think I've been fortunate in the sense that the roles have been evolving. Whilst I'm surrounded by these, very technical experts who are very good at what they do, I think I've always found that niche that in terms of engagement. So regardless of what we do, when you're talking digital transformation or anything IT, any space really, but more so in IT, engagement is a key part of that. It's always about keeping in focus what problems we're trying to solve. You don't want to be implementing solutions that are looking for problems. You want to have an understanding of what challenge here we're trying to overcome, rather than bringing some shiny thing that's not, we're trying to fit somewhere. So I think I've really enjoyed that, being able to have those conversations and engagement. And I think that's what drives us. I've never looked back since then. So my role now, even so, we're having conversation about what the next iteration of our digital strategy will look like. The first conversation with that is to engage with the stakeholders. What is it that you want from digital what would digital help you to deliver? What does that even mean? Because that word is thrown around so much, technology and this, and what does that mean from the business? In simple language, what it is that you're trying to achieve, and how can we help you get there? So being able to have those interactions and engagement and business relationship, that works great for me. So yes, and it's just looking at what that next journey, what next part of the journey is going to look like. But I don't see us moving away from having those conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you've been owning your journey and going, right, that's my next goal, I'm going to get there in X amount of time. What are the strategies that you've employed to make sure that you get to that point? Is it through, have you used mentorship? Have you used internal sponsors, coaches? Who else has played a part in your career?
So as I mentioned earlier on, I sort of belong. So all through the course of my career, I've been fortunate to interact and to relate to a number of colleagues, both on a technical and non-technical front, but networks. So at every stage, there is a place for networking. It saves you having to reinvent the wheel. It saves you having to learn some very hard lessons that somebody else has already learned. They can just share that with you and you can run with it. So all through that journey, I've always had colleagues around me, networks that I belong to. So some of them are more relevant at a particular stage in my journey. And as I sort of move forward and progress, that changes. And even now, there are a number of networks that I belong to, both from a digital health leadership point of view or the wider health information management executive point of view. And there's still a lot of learning. I'm learning every day. And that's why we always refer to not just career, but in this instance, as a journey. It is a journey because the whole point of it being a journey is that you're learning as you go along, you're improving. So I've found networks really helpful. Some opportunities that have come about, some scholarships that I've been able to get a hand on, so to speak. Some of them I probably wouldn't have been able to get those opportunities if I hadn't interacted with the right people, if I hadn't been part of the right network. I could just be having a 5-minute conversation with a colleague and they just say, oh, are you aware this is happening? There's this webinar and so and so. And you think, oh, right. And then you pick that up. And there are platforms as well. Since we're talking digital, there's so many digital platforms now where we can all collaborate. I mean, this is one of them. We're having this conversation right here now. But there's so many platforms where colleagues are really willing to share what they've done. So if somebody is going to write out, for instance, a clinical strategy, for instance, somebody else has already done it. So why start from scratch? They've done a fantastic work of it, and unashamedly, just, you can work with that and people are willing to share that information. So networks really important. I can't emphasize that any more than that, but it's knowing the relevant networks. So the one that sort of, you want to be part of networks where there are colleagues who are already doing what you're looking to do a few years down the line, but also you in networks where you're enabling others. So it's about climbing the ladder as well as building ladders. So somebody else is pulling you upwards and you are pulling others. So it's a chain reaction. See networks as opportunities to empower and be empowered.
Yeah, no, it's a really important point you make there, and I talk about this quite a lot in terms of, I think in business, people have learned to beg, borrow, and steal whatever they can from the people. If it's been done before, don't try and do it again. Just take from that and build on it. But I think when it comes to people's own careers, they sometimes see that as their own challenge and their own problem to deal with, and they don't think to ask others and go, okay, they've already been through this pain. What was their experience and what can we learn from that? Which I guess is all part of this video series. This isn't something I want to dwell on because for me, the landscape at the moment is very much one where women are sought after for technical roles. There's loads of great opportunities for ladies and people from all different backgrounds. Actually, to be fair, diversity is key at the moment, and businesses are recognising that. But somebody in the group has asked, whether you personally felt any challenges coming through the system, not as a white middle class male that tends to get most of the opportunities in the eyes of some people. And if so, how have you overcome those challenges?
So, good question. when faced with challenges, I've often take the view that when you work in a field like ours in technology, where there is significantly less female representation, you have a choice how you see things. So there is a choice to see things from a different frame of reference. So for instance, I choose a narrative that empowers me to get the job done. So for me, it's about being tenaciously persistent in feeding my focus. So I try not to get distracted. It can be difficult depending on the nature of the challenge. And make no mistake about that. It's not undermining it, but the approach I've taken over the years, oftentimes, is to feed my focus. That is where I'm looking to go. Anything that is not feeding, that is not helping you towards where you're looking to go, is a distraction, simply put. And that's the approach I've taken. And it's about finding a path that serves you. So what is within your control? What can you change? So this is a scenario, this is a challenge. Can you change anything about that challenge? What can you do that empowers you to move towards the direction of your goal? So it is making sure that you're clear what is within your control and what isn't, and then empowering yourself. Then it's almost giving yourself a talk about, right, what do we do about this? Is where we're at. What are we doing about this? So it takes deliberate practice over time. It's not something that happens overnight, but with deliberate practice, asking yourself very objective questions. This is where we're at now. Can I change something about this? How do I move forward? And it's constantly challenging yourself. Is there more work to be done to increase the number of women and underrepresented ethnic groups in tech leadership? Absolutely. There's no denying that. But it's about making a decision on a personal level that while we're waiting for things to change for the better, and there is progress, we're just not quite there yet, what can you do about your journey here and now? It's about owning your journey.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I think there's a very nice segue into one of our other questions that somebody asked in advance, which was about what can employers and or colleagues do to try and achieve the goals that we're all trying to achieve, which is that level playing field, that equality across all demographics. What are those pragmatic things that you think people can do in the here and now to change that for this and the next generation?
So that is another long-standing conversation point. So I don't think any of us is surprised by that question at all. But it's about embedding diversity and inclusion into cultural practice. So rather than keep talking about it, it's about making that part of a culture, embedding that into culture. But it is a partnership effort. So it's not one side, it's going to be done this way or that. It's a partnership effort, really. And if done properly, that benefits both employers and employees. And it's ensuring equality and providing opportunities to employees, regardless of their background. It not only allows organizations to draw on the diverse skills as well as the talents of their workforce, but it is important to keep this on the strategic agenda, not to lose focus of that. So where we've got to in the conversation to date, it's been great. So we're moving forward. Again, it's a very slow pace, but it's about putting the words into actions. I think a lot of people are sort of maybe tired of hearing the narrative because we all know what the narrative is at the moment, but it's taking that extra step into making sure we walk the talk. So it's about the very practical steps in order to be able to reap the benefits. So there's still a lot to do, but we're not where we used to be, but we're not where we should be either. So it's still a way to go.
Yeah, and another common theme, which you've been asked about, which hearing you talk, it sounds very much like your inner monologue is one of positivity and looking at what do we have control of and what can we change and how do we do that. But somebody has asked, do you ever get those moments of self-doubt and any sense of imposter syndrome, or have you had that throughout your career? And if so, how have you dealt with that?
So when you find yourself, especially as the only female in a room, say you have a technical conference or meeting, and there's conversation going on, it's rare not to. Once in a while, you do get that. Excuse me a minute there. So once in a while, you do get the feeling, think, am I meant to be here? You almost doubt yourself. But I have to say that, again, from a frame of reference, I sort of, it's having that self-talk and say, I am here because there's a reason why I'm here, to get a job done. So you're not seeing a them and a us. You're seeing a collective. We're here as a professional collective to get the job done. A professional collective to advance the services that we provide to our customers, whoever the customers may be in that sense. So it's having a self-talk. It's taking yourself to one side and having that self-talk with yourself. You've got to be your own your own mentor in the first instance. You've got to have self-talk with yourself. So I find that helpful. It's just refocusing again and being objective about, I'm here because I've got work to do, and I deserve to be here and privileged to be here. But it's focusing on getting the work done, and don't let your doubts weigh you down. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, there will be occasions where you find yourself, especially when you are in a new role and you're still trying to settle in. But there is tendency to think, oh, right, now that we're here, how do we move this forward? But it goes back to look on the learning in terms of what you've achieved to date, but don't dwell on that. Just use that to almost find a way to motivate yourself. Whatever works for you. People have different ways of doing that. But for me, it's that self-talk and making sure that I refocus, I reflect, and just move forward.
Yeah, no, that's great, Mary. Thank you. I think for me, the key takeaway from this conversation is about owning your own journey, recognizing that there might be challenges along the way, but not seeing them as hurdles, but looking at them as opportunities. And there's always going to be an opportunity within that challenge that you can do something different to overcome that challenge. And I think that's a really powerful message. I'll open the Q&A up to anybody that wants to ask any further questions about, Mary's career journey and things like that. We have had one question in the chat, which I've left till the end because it sounds like one of our members is actually looking for some advice about the challenge they're facing as opposed to your story. But they're wondering, which I guess is probably quite a common thing in that I get told about in public sector organisations, around the politics. So you are trying to solve the business problem using digital transformation, but that always involves people. So do you ever get caught up in the politics of the matter, and how do you overcome this?
You can't. I think you have politics everywhere. I think that's the easiest way to say that is choosing to focus on what it is you're trying to achieve. So if I've got that question right, Kevin, so how do you deal with the politics of the workplace and still get your work done? Have I framed it? Yes?
Yeah, that's how I interpret it.
So when you're working with people, again, inevitably, there will be occasions like that. There will be nuances in political nuances, regardless of the environment you find yourself, and more so in the technological space. What I would draw on the experience of the last 12 months again, that we've been able to pull together across the globe on different fronts, but more so in the technological landscape, and being able to put aside those red tape and political hold-ups, if I can use that. But the first question is, can you change that? Will the politics go away from the corporate organizations? No. As if we want to, it's an intrinsic part of most organizations. So the question is, how do you get around that and keep your work, still get your work done? So what conversations are necessary to you achieving the objective that is set before you? What conversations do you need to be part of? And it's all about negotiation. Life is a negotiation. So it's employing some strategies, some negotiation strategies, even when dealing with stakeholders. So we talk about stakeholder management. It's about how some stakeholders you have to work closer with than others, and some will require time more than others. So it's all about finding a way to frame the situation in such that you're not looking at it from a problem point of view. You're looking at it from a, right, how can I work around this and still achieve my objectives? Because you still need to work with people. So a lot of our work is about having those conversations. So it's about employing some negotiation strategies and tactics to be able to achieve what you need to do. But to look at it in such a way that suggests we can do something about that or stop the politics from happening, I think that would just be going around in circles. I think it's about finding strategies to work with stakeholders, and to find a way to pivot really when we need to, and staying within what we can control. So don't get caught in conversations that you can't change, not getting caught in systems that sort of endemic situations in the system where you can't do anything about it. So what can you do something about? So look at it from a solutions point of view. How can I make this work? I may have oversimplified that, but I think it's very important to know what you can change and can't change. And then that will help you in terms of how you address the situation.
Yeah, I think when we place individuals into particularly difficult transformation roles, the first thing I hear is hearts and minds, and it's all about understanding those difficult stakeholders, what they want out of the situation, and bringing them on the journey as opposed to trying to force them on the journey. It's making them want to hold your hand through it as opposed to you dragging them. So no, that's really good advice, Mary. Thank you for that. So I think everybody got their questions in before the session, which has been really helpful. But if anybody does have any questions, obviously feel free to use the chat to ask them. While people do that, Mary, just one final question for me is, are there any other messages or pieces of advice that you would like to get across to our audience, or you think that, if you were in the audience in an earlier part of your career, you'd have loved to hear from yourself?
I think embrace challenges. Most of us don't want to hear this. I certainly when I'm in the thick of it, I don't necessarily want to hear my own advice, but I have to give myself a self-talk. But challenges are opportunities to grow and to learn. In the moment, it may not look that way, but it comes to a point where you're sort of almost looking forward to it, thinking, right, what is there to learn? What can I learn from this, and how can I move forward? But it's also finding opportunities to give back, to find it, whatever shape that takes. One of them is a Women in Mentoring, Women in Technology Mentoring program. Again, I've got to refer to that. Is finding opportunities, no matter how little, to give something back. So, and be a stepping stone for somebody else. It could just be one piece of advice that helps somebody move forward in their journey. But also in communications and relationships, professional relationships, it is so important to see things from the other viewpoints. Be prepared, always be prepared to be wrong. You listen to other perspectives, because there are oftentimes you find opportunities in those differing views. So when you're having those conversations, it takes me back to the last question about dealing with political nuances and everything. But I think a lot of times when we put ourselves in the other people's shoes and trying to understand where they're coming from, it does help us understand better. So I like when, people come to the table and it brings something totally different, a different perspective to the conversation, which I haven't thought about. It helps me think differently. And it's trying not to be too spotlighted on what is in front of you. Don't, try and expand that horizon. We always talk about thinking outside the box. You may want to think outside the building. You may just want to, look, it's not just the helicopter view. So embrace those differing views and it comes back to the diversity and inclusion conversation. But you just don't know where that solution, that fantastic idea is going to come from. So be open to those conversations. And it's okay not to know. I mean, at some point, it's one of my favorite phrases. I don't know, do you? Talk to somebody who knows. Employ the best people, employ those who know, and seek out those who've already been on your journey. Don't reinvent the wheel. Talk to people who already know.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Mary. And I think, your advice, you absolutely are practicing what you preach there. When we first spoke about you doing this session, your message to me was that if I can help only one person by sharing my story, then that will be success. And I'm sure you've done that today, because there's been some really, really great advice in that. So thank you very much for your time. Really good to have you join us today. And yeah, best of luck with whatever the future brings.
Thanks for having me, Kevin, and thanks again to everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.